And now for our good value spot, based on Which magazine's recommendations. Which, the magazine of the Consumers Association, buy all the goods they choose in the tests in the shops, just as you and I do. They then carry out tests in a laboratory, and they generally ask ordinary housewives and users of the articles being tested to give their opinions. And from all this, they draw up their list of good value items. And Gwyneth Davis, who is talking to Joan now, is the Consumers Advisory Training Officer of the Consumers Association.
In our last programme, we talked about cookers. Now it's saucepans. Which magazine produced their report on saucepans a month ago. And here are some of the pans that they tested. With them is Gwyneth Davis to tell us about the different materials used for cooking. But first, there's a wide price range here, isn't there?
Yes.
And a set of pans could cost between £5 and £50.
That's right.
Shall we start with the cheapest?
Yes, these are aluminium saucepans. They range between about 80p and £3 odd. With these, the weight varies enormously according to the gauging on them. So you can see this is a fairly thin aluminium,
Yep.
whereas the one next to it is in fact quite a lot thicker. This is important to watch out for. For cleaning, they're very easy, in fact. They can be scoured with an abrasive, or if they get very sort of discoloured inside, then you can just boil up vinegar in them, and that gets rid of it.
Now this one here has quite a thick base.
That's
Why is
right.
that important?
Well, if you're using a saucepan on electricity, you do need a thick base to make sure that you don't get heat spotting from the rings inside. So there needs to be plenty of space for the heat to diffuse through.
And what gauge would you need for electricity?
Well, that would be a 10 to 12 gauge. For gas, you could probably get away with 14 to 18. But you would have to be careful not to drop this because it would dent.
And where do you find the gauge, in fact?
Well-
Written? Is it on the pan?
No, it's not normally on the pan, unfortunately. It's usually on the box. If you look in the showroom, it'll say machine ground or something of that sort.
Right. Well, let's move on to this pretty-looking one here.
Yes, this is ceramic. These retail between about £4 and £5.50. They're fairly heavy, but they do cook slowly and evenly. And they do retain the heat well, so they're good for cooking casseroles and that sort of thing. And of course, you can put them straight from the oven to the table.
They might break, though.
They will if you drop them.
Yes. Now, copper. I've always liked copper, but what are the drawbacks? They look nice.
They do look nice,
When
but
they're clean.
when they're clean, that's the point. They do need constant polishing to keep them from tarnishing. Also, they are fairly expensive, £9 to £10 a saucepan. So by the time you bought 5 of these, you could have bought yourself a cheap cooker as well
Yes.
instead. They do heat fairly slowly and evenly again, though. But do remember when you buy one of these that it must be lined with some other metal inside, usually either tin or steel, because copper on its own is poisonous.
Right. And weight? They're quite heavy. Wouldn't like to fill that with water.
I shouldn't try filling it with water, no. This one's just come straight from the labs, I think, in any case, so...
It's got a hole in the bottom. Now, these brighter-looking ones, what are they?
These are stainless steel. Now, this doesn't, in fact, conduct heat as well as some of the others we've looked at. So usually another metal is included, something like, well, this copper basing,
Yeah.
so that you get the best of both worlds, as these are easy to clean and they do stay looking nice.
Handles. Do we have to be careful about certain types of handles?
Well, some are easier to use than others. For instance, this one here, if you can see, has in fact got a screw right the way through there, and this could in fact work loose. So we prefer the ones that have what we call rivets.
What's a rivet?
Well, it's where the whole thing is attached to the
I
saucepan.
see,
It's a lot more secure. And also, you should look really for plastic or perhaps wooden handles rather than metal ones, because the heat would come up something like this and burn you
Right.
if you're holding it.
Let's go on to the last group, a colourful one here.
Yes, these are enamel covered. These range between about £2.50 and £5.50, depending what the enamel covers. It could be enamel on aluminium or stainless steel or cast iron, as this one is. It's quite a lot heavier. You can, although, only use the abrasives which are recommended for enamel on these, because you'll take the coating off otherwise.
So it limits you a little.
Yes, it does.
Now, all the ones we've seen haven't had non-stick linings, right?
That's
this
right.
one does.
That's right.
Do you recommend non-stick linings?
Well, We found that people like them, especially if they didn't enjoy washing up, as I don't. They're very easy to wipe round, you know, and they don't tend to stick as much as the others.
And how do you clean them?
Well, with a sponge or a soft dishcloth, something like that, but don't use abrasives on them. Don't scour them because you take the coating off again.
I'm learning a lot. On the whole, what does Which recommend as good value?
Well, obviously it would depend how you wanted to use the saucepan. Something like this would be super if you had an open-plan kitchen and could put them on the shelves. The ceramics that we talked about were very useful to take from the oven to the table. But overall, thought that the heavier gauge aluminium, with or without the non-stick lining, would be suitable, or stainless steel. These were the ones that I use as preferred.
Right, so it's simplicity that wins.
Seems to be, yes.
Gwyneth, thank you very much.
Okay.